So number one, we do absolutely need that course ID. Okay. It did actually make sense. It was like my name and fa14. But I had to delete the course. But since I had that username already, they wouldn't let me use it. That was after hours of dealing with customer service. It was like, this is stupid. So let's go through. Okay. I know you can't see anything yet. Give me a sec. Oops. Cancel. There it is. Okay. Slide this guy across. So this is how I go in. Google Mastering Chemistry. There it is. Very first thing. Pearson's the only one that does this. Okay. So we can go into the Mastering Chemistry. And then we can go through and do Register Now. Oh, I can't see it either. So let's see. We are in the US or Canada. Yes, I have a course ID. This is really hard to type and have no idea what I'm writing. Fa14. Okay. If you buy it from the bookstore, okay, so the bookstore actually, for once in my entire experience with dealing with bookstores or campus bookstores, actually has a reasonable deal if you like digital textbooks. You can buy the digital textbook and the homework for 110 bucks. Okay? If you do that, you will have an access code. So you can say, yes, I have an access code, and you can go through and do the rest of it with the access code. If you've purchased the textbook already and need to get the homework, no, you need to buy access. So we'll go through and click Next to select the textbook that we're using. Stick with the Introductory Chemistry Core 1 7th edition. Next. And then I would like to buy it without the e-text. That is the only way I have found to be able to buy just the homework without the text. Okay? It's a bit frustrating in my opinion. Then you can go through Next, and then I think the rest of it you have to enter in all your privacy mumbo jumbo. Okay? You're then set to pretty much just buy the homework. Okay? Sure, it's accept. They show us the price here, yeah. And the price, again, ludicrously expensive in my opinion, but that's where we're sticking with it. Okay? Questions about that process? Questions about anything we've talked about so far? Okay. So we will go back to, hopefully, the homework. So when it comes to homework, when you take a look at the syllabus, there's a whole lot of information on the homework, okay, as far as how it's graded, and that's what we'll talk about here. So if you shift to assignments, the tab or the section that says homework, within the syllabus you've got a whole bunch of extra information. How many of you have used online homework systems before? Really? Oh, okay, cool. How many of you liked the online homework system? Kind of the impression that I've seen. Okay. It's a nice feature because it allows things to be graded and you get instant feedback on your results and what you're putting in there. Which is far better, as far as I'm concerned, than you just filling out or doing homework and then checking a solutions guide and saying, oh, I was wrong. Oh, now that I know the answer's obvious. Here's the answer. Okay. What that did was gave you some really good skills on how to understand an answer when it's the answer. Okay. But when you get to the exam, do you have the answer? No. Okay. So it actually hurts you to go through and do homework in that fashion. So with the online homework systems, while it may be a bit tedious to deal with and problematic, and we enter something and there's some notational formatting mumbo jumbo that just messes everything up, at very least you're going through and you're struggling with the homework, which is what homework is supposed to be. It should not be an easy breeze through, because if it was, you didn't need to do it to begin with. Okay? So it should be a little bit of a challenge, at least parts of it. Okay? I am intimately aware of the issues of formatting and notation within online homework systems because I was one of the first ones to deal with it and use it while working at ASU. Okay? So to fix that problem, or to at least remedy it somewhat, because I don't want the homework to be a penalty, I want it to be kind of a reward for actually doing the assignments, I've scaled the point values for homework. Okay? So that scaling shows up in the syllabus. Okay? I'm going to steal this from you real quickly, sorry, just so I can get an example of the numbers. So for instance, if your homework score, according to mastery, or mastering chemistry, is greater than 90%, you get 100% of the points. Okay? So your homework score is 100 points. If you get greater than 80%, you get 90 points. Okay? That's an A for all rights and purposes. If your score is then, and now is where it gets a little bit more impressive, I would say, if your score is greater than 60%, so you're doing just a little bit more than half of the homework, you get 80 points for the homework. Okay? So it is very lenient as far as that goes, as far as awarding points for going through and attempting the homework. Okay? That's really all it's there for. I want you to attempt it. I want you to go through and do it. That score will get posted to Canvas, and I'll try and post that after every exam. So every exam I try and summarize everything about grades. We'll talk about it briefly in class so you get an idea on where exactly you are as far as grades in the overall class goes, and we continue on with the rest of the semester. Okay? Questions about the homework? And it looked like you had it.
Is that when it's due? That's before the exam?
Due dates, unfortunately, at this point are going to be kind of variable. Ideally, the due dates should be pretty much close to right after I've talked about it. Okay? We'll cover reasons on that in a little bit, which you're aware of. So, for instance, I believe the first homework is scheduled to be due Monday, I think. And it's over Chapter 1, which is just reading. There really isn't any work to be done. It's just kind of reading it and answering some questions about what you read.
Can you post them early? So if you wanted to,
I will try my best to get them posted as early as possible. My goal is to try and get all of the homework. I've actually borrowed from a colleague her homework assignments. So they've been whittled down substantially, so I should be able to go through and select homework questions pretty quickly and get them up. Okay. Those due dates will show up on mastering, so you might have to check there as well for due dates. As soon as I get them live, I will post to both Canvas, which means Canvas is going to be full of announcements, and I'll also announce in class, hey, the homework is going to be due for this chapter on this day. Okay? If I start to get backed up with trying to build homework assignments, I'll make them due all right before the exam. Okay? Or at least the exam that they're based on. Make sense? Other questions about the homework? All right, so the big lesson, course ID, fa14. Okay, fa14, fa14. That should set you up. You'll only need to know that code once. General summary of the class. Okay, so we can find the competencies at that link. But then this is kind of an interesting course to kind of go through because most people are just satisfying this for their general science information and don't really need much beyond that. Okay, so people come in expecting chemistry to be this big, crazy subject. One thing that we need to realize is that it is a very, very old subject. Okay, we're looking at probably 800 years of work going into generating the material that we're going to cover this semester. Okay, so if we think about that, 800 years of people struggling with science and failing and blowing stuff up and probably dying in the process of doing it, okay, you're trying to do in 16 weeks. Okay, so it's not an easy task. Okay, so with this class, we do try to do a superficial overview to kind of cover the basics of it so it becomes a little bit less in depth. If you moved into 151, 152, or heaven forbid, organic chemistry, you go into much more depth and detail about each of those individual fields. Okay? Just kind of unfortunate because what we're trying to do is get you excited about chemistry, and what do? We gloss over everything but never tell you anything about any one of those everythings. Okay? So try to appreciate it. I'm going to try and do my best to make it as exciting and interesting as possible, as I can see by your bright and smiling faces right now. Okay? But realize it will take time. You're probably scheduled, this is actually a standard hours per week for any course, any lecture course, 12 to 16 hours per week, outside of class, outside of lab, every course, that's what you're supposed to be spending as far as time goes. How many people have ever spent that much time on a course? I probably haven't either, okay? So it depends on the course and what grade you end up wanting in the class. If you're a student that really needs to get an A and pick stuff up fast, you probably won't need 12 to 16 hours. If you want an A, but you know already that you need more time, you're probably hitting 12 to 16 hours. Okay, so be aware of that kind of effort that you're going to have to put in per week to deal with this. Okay? I don't want to scare you away because it is still kind of fun. It's just work. Extra credit. Okay, this is a fun one because everybody asks for extra credit. By the end of the semester, day before the final, I need extra credit because I need to pass the class. Which, in my opinion, is disingenuous both to you as a student trying to learn the material and to me as an instructor. Okay? So we're going to switch this up a little bit. I am going to offer extra credit. I'll be very upfront right now about that. However, my extra credit doesn't happen at the end of the semester. It happens now. It happens next week. It happens the week after that, the week after that. Okay? What I want you to do is prove that you are working on the material, that you are thinking about it. Because if you can do that, and then you aren't doing well in the class, you've at least proven that you've been trying to do well. You deserve that extra little boost. Okay? So how do we go through and prove that? Okay, so I'm going to give you an assignment called a dialogue. Okay, it's going to give you a 2% bonus, which really isn't much, but if you go back through and look at the extra credit that most faculty give you, it's usually about 2%. Okay, it's not a whole lot. It is enough to boost you on a borderline grade from the lower grade to the higher grade. Okay? So anybody that knows that they're typically a borderline student, you should probably be doing this. I was a borderline student my entire life. Okay, so if you're on a borderline grade, you should be doing these dialogues. Okay? So what you are going to do is within the 24 hours of every lecture, either Tuesday or Thursday, you send me an email. Okay? And in that email, you're going to do a dialogue, okay? A one-sided dialogue, because you're just going to tell me and I'm not going to tell you anything. You're going to tell me what you learned, okay? Preferably just that week. Okay? Really simple. Okay? This can be as simple as 1 to 2 sentences, or it can be long as pages of documents. I've had people turn in full outlines of the textbook. I'm fine with that. Both are perfectly acceptable. The 1 to 2 sentences is where I kind of want you to be. Really simple. This is what I learned about X. This is what X means. Okay? So you can't come in and say, oh, I learned about Pauling and Lewis. Really? What did you learn about Pauling and Lewis? Okay? Give me some kind of context that you know what you've actually said that you've learned, as opposed to just having spit out a random name or term. Okay? You send me 12 of those throughout the semester. We officially have 16 weeks, possible-ish 15. Okay? So you can even send them during weeks that you've had an exam. If you give me those 12, guaranteed 2% bump. Done. No questions asked. And this is strictly extra credit. This is another thing that always bugged me as a student. Professor comes out, here's extra credit. Okay, when do you total that extra credit into the grade? Before or after you assign grades? Oh, we do it before, so it's easier to total. That's not extra credit. That's a penalty. Okay? That's a penalty for not doing the extra credit. This is strictly extra credit. I assign grades at the end of the semester, go back through, look at anybody that's on that borderline, look up that person's name in my email, and if you give me 15 of or 12 of these, there's the 2%. Done. Okay? I know we're all smart here, so you've already thought of a loophole. Well, this guy's not going to read those emails. I'm just going to send him, haha, you're not reading this. Okay? I do read them periodically. Okay? And there is a penalty for that. You get one freebie of, hey, this isn't acceptable. You got to go in a little bit more depth, Or if it's really the ha-ha, you're not reading this, you might get something a little bit sharper from me. But for the most part, I just send an email back saying, I want a little bit more information out of this. Like, who is Pauling? Who is Lewis? What did they do? Why do you know those names? Okay, so you get that one warning. After that, second is not a warning. You lose the ability to get extra credit. Okay? So, 12 weeks, or 12 of these assignments. That means one per week. First exam is, I don't know when the first exam is, week 4, week 5. Okay, so at this point, how do you all feel about the class? Everybody's doing pretty well, right? Everybody's got 100% of the points possible. Everybody's getting an A. This is fantastic. Okay? When do you find out you aren't doing so great? After the first exam. Okay? Then what happens? Well, I've only got 10 weeks left in the semester. I'm not going to do the dialogues. No. Do the dialogues anyway. Okay? So you can come in at any point and start doing these dialogues. Okay? Because what, again, we're trying to do is force you to think about that material. Okay? So prove that you're thinking about it. If it comes down to the end of the semester and you know you're 2 or 3 short, send multiple a week. Send after Tuesday and after Thursday's lecture. Okay? If you send 2 a week for the first 6 weeks and then start sending none, that doesn't quite work. Okay? So you can kind of pick up mid-semester and say, I need to start sending more, spending more time with the class. That's fine. That's acceptable. But ideally, we're going 1 a week, nice and simple, real easy. Like this week, you learned about dialogues. Oh, that's awesome. Okay? Kind of makes sense? Okay. What if you've only sent 10 of the possible 12? What do you think? Should we add some more information to that? Give you some context? Let's say 10 was the most submitted of any student. And you submitted 10. What do you think is going to happen?
If it's the most that everyone else sent, then I guess it would be okay. But
It's
if it's the least
perfectly
from
okay.
everyone else, then it's not, because it wouldn't be fair to the person that sent 12.
Exactly right.
Sent 10.
So that 12 number is variable. Okay? So if the most anybody sent was 10, then 10 will be the 2% bonus up. Okay? What if you send 10 and everybody else has been sending 12?
No.
That's not really fair to give you the 2%. But you did do a lot of work, maybe I'll give you 1%. Okay? So it is kind of a rough approximating sliding scale. 1%, again, isn't much, but that can be enough between a B and an A. Okay? Or a C and a B, or a D and a C. Okay? So this is here to help you. Okay? I also have ulterior motives. Okay? What might be the ulterior motive in this case?
You want to see people paying attention?
That's not a bad ulterior motive. That one's actually pretty genuine. There's actually one that's even more kind of sneaky with this. If you spend all the time to do the studying, do the work, how are you going to do in the class?
Really well.
Really well. Did you need the dialogue?
No.
Nope. Okay. So the intent is to encourage you to do the work up front and ahead of time to the point that the dialogue is pointless for you and it does not affect your grade because you're already doing that awesome in the class. Okay. That's the sneaky, underhanded motive behind it. Okay. It's a good one. It works. Okay. So I want you to know where that's coming from. Some of the limitations on this, you notice it says 24 hours. Why 24 hours? Why not just give you the whole week?
Because the information's fresh?
It has to do with the information's fresh. They've actually done studies. You take a lecture, and then they timed people's memory retention every hour after that lecture. Once you hit 24 hours, you've forgotten 95% of the material. Okay? 95%. Okay, that's a lot to forget. You defeated the entire purpose of me standing here and lecturing to you. Okay? So that's why we want that 24-hour, and the closer to the lecture, the better, because that's when you've reviewed it, it's going to stick in your head a lot better, and again, you do better in the class. Okay? So that's the reasoning behind that 24 hours. How strict am I on that? Not all that strict because I don't want to get all that nitpicky on times and dates. It just becomes a pain. Right? But that's, again, the intent behind it. I want you to know the intent so that you try and follow that intent. Okay? These aren't just arbitrary rules. The last big caveat with this, I need this magic subject line. D4. Dialogue. FA. 14. 2014. And of course, chem130. Okay, why do I need that subject line?
So you can count them?
I can search the emails. I could also count them, look at it. Google's got a fun feature of auto sorting. If I got 48 of you sending me these dialogues, and then my other class, another 20 students sending me these dialogues, every week I'm looking at, depending on how excited you are about this assignment, I could potentially see 120 of these emails popping up. Okay, how urgent are any of these? Not at all. I don't want to see these emails. So I've got Google to automatically set up, filter these emails out, set them in a separate folder so that when I've got time, I can go through and read them on my own. Okay? That subject line allows me to sort it out. Without that subject line, it doesn't sort out, and it sits in my main email box, and that just then makes me panic that I haven't done anything because I've got more emails in there than should be. Okay? So that's kind of to make me happy. It also allows it for me to be easier to find your dialogues at the end of the semester. Okay? The other thing that's nice about that subject line is I also have Google set up to send an auto respond. So if I get that email, you get an auto response from me that says something like, thank you for participating. Unless you hear something else from me, that email was acceptable or that dialogue was acceptable. Okay? If you hear no other email responses from me throughout the rest of the semester with regards to the dialogue, fantastic. All of them were credit or counted as credit. I'm not going to retroactively go back and read them and say, oh, you sent in crappy ones. Okay? So those will count. So in theory, you get no emails from me beyond that automatic email for the dialogue.
It don't have to be in capital letters.
I honestly don't know that. I would put it in caps just in case. I don't think Gmail is all that cap sensitive. It should be okay. Okay, you'll notice there are no spaces in it as well. Okay, if you look at the syllabus, I also say in the syllabus, I won't count it as a dialogue if you send the wrong subject line. Not really true either, but if I sound all strict and mean, then you actually do it right. Okay? What if you have a question with the class? Oh, I had a problem on this homework. Where do you think might be a good place to send that? You could send it to the tutoring center, but let's say you can't make it in there. You need to get that question answered. I've seen this happen. Because you were doing your homework, you wrote the dialogue as you were doing the homework and noted that you had a question about it. Okay, and you put it in the dialogue. I read the dialogues at best once a week. The odds that you're going to get your question answered on putting it in a dialogue is very, very unlikely. Send me a different email with a different subject line. Everything will be good. I'll get to that email probably within 12 hours, but give me 24 just in case.
Do you do Canvas too? Or?
Yes, I will use the Canvas email. I just don't like it. Okay. But yes, I will respond both through Canvas and the standard email. All right? Questions?
Do you want us to send from our regular emails or our school assigned emails?
Officially, all correspondence with instructors must happen through Maricopa emails. So either the school or the Maricopa district. I'm not one of the instructors that will ignore your email if it didn't come from those. Okay. Sources of help, all sorts of fun stuff. Again, got all that up there. The Canvas discussion board can be helpful as well. You can post questions there and see if other students will help you out. Okay, so take advantage of that as a possibility. Questions? You all excited for this class yet?
So pumped.
So pumped, yeah. That's some good activity. When are we done?
9:40.
9:40? Oh, wow, I got tons of time. Okay, so we'll do one break out of the schedule, or out of that for the syllabus. There's a couple other things I wanted to mention. So we've got all the syllabus stuff in here. The one that's going to be of particular importance as an extra thing is this final exam. It is cumulative, covers everything throughout the whole semester. The final exam is also standardized across all of the courses of 130, so you can't avoid that cumulative exam by taking somebody else's class. Everybody taking 130 at this campus takes that test, okay, or takes some version of it. It is strictly multiple choice. Most of your exams will be multiple choice as well, with the possibility of 5 short answers, no more than 5 short answers, which I think is also up there. No more than 5 short answers on the regular exams. The reason why I'm pulling this back up is for this little phrase here at the end, resurrection final. Anybody know what that means?
You replace.
Not you, you already know.
Oh.
Anybody else?
The exam score will like help if it replaces the lower score, like lowest exam score.
Yeah. So we've got 3 regular exams throughout the semester. Okay. Everybody has a bad day. If your bad day happens to fall on one of those exam days, that's going to suck for your grade. Okay. So what we'll do is have a resurrection final. The whole point of the final is to prove that you learned something in this class. That's what all the exams were there for too. So, since we're all testing the exact same thing, when the final comes around, if you score a higher percentage on the final than you did on any one of your other exams, your final exam percentage will replace, okay, the lowest exam score. What if your final exam percentage is lower than all your other exams? No replacing, score sticks. Okay? So don't go lower. It shouldn't go lower. It should actually go higher because it's a review at that point. Okay? So that in general does also seem to help people as well. This also fixes exam time conflicts. So for instance, if you had to miss class for some reason and you had a scheduled, miss an exam and you had a scheduled excused absence, this can fix that. So you end up getting a 0 on that exam, but the final exam score would definitely replace it. Right? So that can fix that issue as well. I do, kind of within reason, allow early and makeup exams. It's usually 24 hours within the scheduled time. Right? So if for some reason you're going to miss the exam day because you're sick, you send me an email right away. Hey, I'm going to miss. Can I take a late exam? I'll ask why. Probably will ask for documentation. And then we'll set up the exam in the tutoring center. You can go take the exam in the tutoring center. It will be a different exam, just so you know. Okay? Kind of makes sense? Questions about any of that? Okay. The rest of the syllabus is pretty straightforward. You do see this 90, 80, 70 cutoffs, pretty standard. I do reserve the right to drop those and almost undoubtedly will drop those cutoffs, but I will never raise them. By that, I mean it is very possible that if you get an 85% in a class that you get an A. Okay? These are minimum cutoffs, so if at any point you clear 80%, you've got a B. Okay? Guaranteed, no questions asked. That's the way it is. Okay? There's your extra credit, extra information. Attendance, withdrawal, all this fun stuff. Attendance, there is a strong correlation between attendance and better grades. Okay, so for that, we encourage attendance. Because I record all the lectures, and in theory, I'm holding on to the microphone as I record all the lectures, you can hear my voice and potentially other students' questions during the class. You can go back and watch those lectures online. I do put in periodic quizzes to kind of help boost attendance a little bit. But it's not strictly necessary to attend class. Okay? If it happens that only one person shows up, then I might accidentally forget to record. Okay? Kind of fun. We haven't really had an attendance problem in the past, so I don't see that being an issue. Okay? Besides, it's more entertaining to watch me. Withdrawal, you're responsible for withdrawing from the class. If you just stop showing up, it is within my rights to leave you in the class and fail you at the end of it. Okay? I've never done that, but that's my right as the instructor. You have to request to be withdrawn or physically go withdraw on your own. Disability accommodations. If you have any kind of learning disability or physical disability, You need to get it cleared through DRS, okay, or Disability Resource Center. Numbers in there, get that cleared, and you can potentially get more time, that kind of stuff, okay, private room. Extra help, get help, tutoring centers. Emergencies, anybody know where our exit is? Probably one of those doors, it's a good option. Okay, but then where do you go?
Parking lot?
Which parking lot? There's a lot of parking lots.
The west parking lot, where cars?
Oh, you actually know the number? We exit out the door or the staircase behind me and go into that parking lot. Before you actually go to the parking lot where your car is, you need to check in with me first. And then depending on if we think it's a legitimate alarm and we're not going to get back into class, then I may excuse you, or you may end up having to stick it out, and we'll wait until we can get back in the building. Okay? But that's where we meet. We exit out to that parking lot. I think I heard something about row 3 or something like that. Don't cheat. Student responsibility. You are responsible for knowing everything within the syllabus. On Thursday, our next meeting day, I will pass around a little sheet saying that you read the syllabus, you've acknowledged that you've read it, you will follow everything within the syllabus. The syllabus is the word, okay? That kind of deal. Why am I not passing that out now? Because in theory, you haven't read it. Some people may have already read it, but I'm giving you that 48 hours to go through and actually read it and guarantee that you've read it. It is subject to change, though I will try and avoid changing it as best as possible. Very last section is probably the only section that you're really concerned about, which would be the schedule. I tried to come up with topics that are general enough that they would apply to any textbook. Then I've got chapter references within edition 7, okay, of the Core 1 textbook. The only difference between edition 7 and edition 6, okay, as it states in the announcements, Chapter 2, okay, in the 6th edition has become Chapter PSS in the 7th. Okay, this is again one of those publisher tricks where they can charge you an extra $100. Okay, so be aware of that kind of numbering change within these. I also have kind of a self-read section because within that self-read column, I'm probably not going to strictly talk about it in class, though some of it may be necessary for us to get through the discussion for that day. Okay? I will try and follow this schedule as closely as I can as well. And since I've got 15 minutes, we can get to the next topic on the syllabus or on the schedule. Before we do that, any questions? No questions yet? Okay. In case you couldn't tell already, I do like to ask questions. I don't really expect hand raising, but if you want a hand raise, that's fine. I usually kind of push for the just random shout out of answers. Okay? So I like that kind of chorus of communication between us. So, chapters 1 and 3. So chapter 1, we're just looking at kind of why study chemistry. Chapter 3 looks at some kind of basic aspects of chemistry. What is matter? What is energy? It's kind of simple sort of overview material. So, fun place to start. We've got a strawberry pie here, and we say, why science? What do you think the pessimist says about this pie?
Just pie.
I'm allergic to strawberries. Strawberries are horrible. There's too much sugar in it. Okay, everything wrong with the pie. What does the optimist say? Sweet strawberry pie. Yeah, there we go. It's a good deal. What does the scientist say? I can make it better. That's what a scientist says. To do that, a couple suggestions came out. What is it made of? Well, if I want to make it better, I do need to know what it's made out of so that I can actually make it. Okay? Once I know what it's made out of, I need to come up with a protocol on how to make it and how to put it together. Okay? Then the last thing I got to do is actually test it and see, did I make it better? Okay? Probably not, but it's just strawberries and sugar, right? Maybe we did make it better. Okay? So that's really what scientists do. They look at general observations for pretty much anything. Say, I can do that better. Whether they do it better or not is entirely debatable. Okay? But that's the goal of a lot of chemists. Right? We see something in nature and say, I want to make solar cells. Well, why would we ever think to make solar cells? Energy, but why do we need energy? Plants get energy to live. Where do they get that energy? Sunlight. Let me do what the plants do. And so we try and do that. We've been doing that for a while and not done very well. Okay? But that brings in politics into it and has nothing to do with science. Okay? So what we're really trying to do within science and chemistry is to try and make things better. Okay? Because yes, we really are that egotistical. Okay? So then we can come back to kind of the scientific method, okay, and how we approach these things. Your textbook has kind of a nice figure on this that goes through and breaks it down on how we would think about it. Okay? And ultimately what we're trying to do is figure out something new, or really find out something so cool that we can attach our name to it and make students memorize it for hundreds of years, okay? Which is the ultimate goal of all scientists. Okay? So it starts really simply. We make an observation. Okay? With that observation, we want to understand something about it, like our strawberry pie. I want to make it better. Okay? This tasted pretty good, but I can make it better. So once we've got an observation, we then want to come up with a hypothesis. How can I make that strawberry pie better? Instead of using just regular sugar, I'm going to use brown sugar. Or I'm going to use turbinado sugar. Yeah, anybody got that one right? Turbinado? It's real sugar. It's actually better quality too. So we've come up with this hypothesis on what we're going to do. We then need to design an experiment to go through and actually make our pie. Okay? Or make our new observations on this. I love the coloring on those arrows. Okay, so there are arrows if you're looking at the right board. Then what happens? We fail. Okay? That's what science is about. Everybody goes, oh, it's observation, hypothesis, experiment. Oh, we've got a law or we've got a theory. No, you fail. So then what happens? Well, we go back to our hypothesis and we change it. Changing the sugar was a horrible idea. Okay, so I'm going to get a different type of flour. Maybe that flour is better. So we go back and run the experiment. Then what happens? You fail again. Okay, I don't remember how many failures I put in here. Oh, I only put one in. Okay. Scientists are all about failure. Okay, which if I was a student sitting down, I'd be like, yes, because I'm all about failure too. I can deal with that. Okay. What makes scientists slightly different from the standard populace that hates failure is that scientists take that failure in stride and move forward. Say, okay, I just need to change. Okay, whatever I did didn't work, let me fix it. Okay, let me change how I'm approaching the subject. And we'll get to this when we do after the first exam, okay, when scores aren't where people want them to be. Okay? So what happens if your exam score is lower than you want it to be?
Take it in stride, move forward.
Take it in stride, move forward, but how do you move forward?
Study more.
You're going to have to change. You can do the extra credit, but if you're really doing that bad, it's not going to help you out that much. You're going to need to change how you've studied for the exam. Some people, it may just be more. Some people, it may be stop reading the textbook and start doing questions, okay, doing problems. So we have to go through and make these adjustments to try and improve and move forward. Okay? Once we move forward, we kind of then shift into two possible ideas. We've got scientific theory. Okay, so we've got an experiment that backs this up. Okay, and we keep refining this theory until we find more observations and more observations that contribute to that theory and say, yep, in these cases it's all valid. Okay? The other options, we came up with a natural law. Okay? Kind of unfortunate thing about natural laws, we're really running out of opportunities to discover natural laws. Okay? Really the only people that are going to be discovering natural laws are going to be the, any guesses? Scientific field is going to be finding natural laws. Possible, cosmology. I was going to say physicists. Okay? The physicists are now kind of breaking down further and further into basic structure of atoms and mass. They're really going to be the ones that are going to potentially find another natural law. Okay? Everything else, pretty well spoken for. We're probably not going to find any natural laws. We're really just going to be refining and discovering new theories, or postulating new theories. Okay? So what's chemistry's role in all of this? Okay, well, you get mathematics and physics on one end of our bridge, or one end of our spectrum of science. Okay? And don't get me wrong, I love mathematics and physicists, but they're a special class of people. Okay? They're usually a little bit loopy, but they're good. They're good people. I like them. Okay? But when you try and have a conversation with most mathematicians and physicists, it's like, what the heck are you talking about? It's a whole other language. We need something to bridge the gap between the standard person and the mathematics and physicists. Okay? Who's that? The chemists. Okay? The chemists are really the ones bridging that gap and trying to actually make all of the mathematics that the physicists and the mathematicians come up with and organize and translate into something that's meaningful that, say, a biologist could use. Okay? Or I could make things worse, but we won't. Okay? So chemistry's role is that bridge, and within that we've got a whole bunch of separate fields. Okay? We've got organic biochemistry, inorganic chemistry, physical chemistry. Those are the big classes. So why is general chemistry not in that big class of sections? Because what does general chemistry try and teach you? All of it. Okay? Again, a bit overwhelming. Remember, we only teach you little bits of it. You would then take future classes to kind of narrow down into each of those individual fields. Okay, what do you need, 5 minutes?
I can wait if you're on.
Okay, well, let's see. Let's see how much further I want to get. So that is pretty much chapter 1. Okay, and kind of go through a little bit of history, but for the most part, just kind of say, this is cool how science is. Okay? One of the last sections within that is more like just a mind game puzzle thing on perception. Okay, so when we look at an individual image, what do you see? Do you see Batman staring at himself, or do you see a vase? Okay. That kind of perception is a lot of what chemistry looks at. How do things change? If we change our perspective on it, can we all of a sudden solve that or make that an easier problem to work with? All right? So I think that's a reasonable place to stop here. So we'll go ahead and get you introduced.